Imagine this. What if the most forward-thinking college campus in the country wasn't built just for 18-year-olds, but for people in their 80s? That's where I work. I'm the president of LaSalle Village. We're a retirement community on the campus of LaSalle University, just outside Boston, but we're more than a place to live. We offer residential learning to older adults who commit to 450 hours of classes a year. They take courses taught by university faculty and fellow residents. They write essays, lead seminars, and sketch in art studios, often side by side with undergraduates. When the village was built, our founder had a radical premise that older adults deserve to grow, not just feel safe, and that learning is a fundamental right at every age. Our culture associates learning with success, like it's a stepping stone to the rest of your life, and then you're done. But I believe its greater power lies in identity, both in who you are and who you're becoming. And that's the idea I'm going to explore with all of you today. That learning serves as a way for us to navigate changes in identity, especially in later life, when the world expects us to be done growing. And I knew this long before I came to LaSalle, because I'd lived it. My own story begins about 30 years ago, with a scholarship, a suitcase, and a Pakistani accent. My visa said I came here to study, but I also wanted to figure out who I really was. Back home, in Pakistan, I'd always felt a little out of step, like I didn't quite belong. I was excited to be reborn in the right country this time. But instead, I landed in a place where everything marked me as an outsider. I had the Levi's and the flannel shirt. I was ready for the 90s, but they didn't feel quite right. My humor fell flat, like it was trying too hard. And even my thoughts had an accent, like they knew they didn't belong in this place either. It turns out there's a name for these kinds of moments. They're called threshold moments. It's when your old identity doesn't fit, but the new one's not fully formed yet. Maybe you lose a job, a relationship ends, or a role that defined you just disappears. And in those moments, you're left wondering, who am I now? To cross that threshold, you just need to be open to something you've been doing since the minute you were born. Learning. But it has to be learning that has shape and structure, that can help you name and reclaim who you're becoming. Not who am I now, but who am I next? That first semester, I took a philosophy class. I figured that if I didn't know who I was, at least I could learn how to think about it. And that one day the professor turned to me and asked me a question. Now, where I came from, you only spoke in class when you had something really meaningful to say. But here, I'd noticed the other students speaking out loud, tossing out casual theories like they were ordering off a menu. Now, I didn't just freeze. I felt raw and exposed, like I was some prickly little hedgehog. But I said something, and it wasn't profound, but in that small act of speaking while uncertain was the start of something new. And it was quiet, and it was cumulative, but one day I woke up and I realized I had crossed that threshold. I had become someone who was not afraid to keep on voicing their opinion. Haven't stopped since. College would not be the last time I had to start over. In my 20s, I was a little successful, and I was more than a little lost. I was a tech consultant, and I drank like one. I drank in airports, in hotel bars, and in the bathroom at work. And finally, I just stopped going out altogether, and I just drank in what I called my triangle of despair. It was the couch, the fridge, and the bed. I joked about it, but it wasn't funny. Maybe for you, it wasn't drinking. Maybe it was caretaking, overworking, an unexpected diagnosis. We all have our very own triangle of despair. I knew I needed to quit, and so I pushed myself into sobriety. But it didn't feel like freedom, so I tried all the things. I tried a journaling binge, multiple Wikipedia rabbit holes. I even tried reading self-help books under a weighted blanket. None of it worked. I was stuck. And so I signed up for a creative writing class. It gave me a time, a place, and a reason to show up. A teacher who kept asking me, why should anyone care about what you've written? And strangers who bore witness. At first, I sat in the back. My fear and anxiety was so strong that I could barely think. But once again, as I worked through the rhythm of learning, read, write, revise, listen, I was reminded it's not about mastery, it's about the effort. And with each awkward and clumsy paragraph, I was able to take a step closer to the person that I had wanted to be. And then, almost a decade later, came marriage and motherhood. And motherhood was really hard. I thought I would just know how to do it, but instead, I lost myself. And so I joined a parenting group. And every Thursday, no matter what, we would get together with our swaddling tips and our sleep charts and our creeping sense of identity loss. And in that shared accountability of our group learning setting, we taught each other about parenting, about loss of control, and about how to move forward. Bruce Feiler, who studies life transitions, says that we experience a life disruption every 12 to 18 months. And honestly, that explains a lot about my Amazon purchase history. And some of these changes are minor, but others change everything. And for women, the impact of these disruptions can often run deeper. Not necessarily because more happens to us, although we do tend to live longer, but because the changes got closer to the heart of who we are. Caregiver, partner, mother. When these roles shift, it's not just life that changes, it's us. And we need help crossing that threshold. And that's why LaSalle Village made so much sense to me when I found it. Because by then, I was a living example of how learning could help you step into a new identity. And I was blown away that the same framework for growth and reinvention that had helped me find myself over and over again was helping older adults do the same. And now, I want to tell you about somebody who embodies that. Her name is Marjorie. Marjorie moved to LaSalle Village with her husband, Bob. They were ready to write their next chapter, and the village felt like the right place to write it. Bob had been living with Parkinson's for years, but he still lived fully. They took classes together. His favorite was a criminal justice seminar. He even joined a study group with undergrads. Hers was a course on relativity. They were curious, engaged, and thriving. But Bob's disease was unrelenting. Marjorie said to me, I didn't lose him all at once. I lost him in pieces. First, his mobility, then his memory, and gradually the rhythm of their days. And each time something changed, Marjorie made a conscious effort not to lose herself. Eventually, Bob passed away. But even in the grief that followed, Marjorie kept reaching. This instinct to keep learning, to keep evolving, it wasn't new. Jumping way back to the 70s, Marjorie had faced a threshold before. She was a stay-at-home mom and freelance editor. It was quiet work, done alone. And one day, she thought to herself, I'm so tired of editing other people's voices. And so she did what she's always done. She turned to learning. She took an aptitude test, read psychology books, and then, at the age of 47, she went back to grad school for neuropsychology. She was decades older than her classmates. Many of them thought she didn't belong, but that didn't stop her from claiming her next chapter. Over 40 years later, standing on another threshold not long after Bob's death, Marjorie did something she hadn't done since high school. She signed up for a poetry class. It was called Writing Poetry That Knows More Than You Do, which felt accurate. The class wasn't about grief, but it gave Marjorie a safe and structured space to name and reclaim parts of herself, and she kept writing. Bit by bit, the poems became a roadmap for who she was becoming. And last year, at 92, Marjorie published her first book of poetry. And that's just one piece of her story. Marjorie's led seminars, chaired the village board, and forged friendships across generations. She didn't learn how to evolve at LaSalle. She just kept doing what she's always done: ask questions, take risks, and learn her way forward. At a time in life when most people are expected to slow down, Marjorie kept reaching, creatively, intellectually, and socially. And it makes you wonder, what happens to the millions of people who never get that invitation to keep growing? We know that older adults who disengage face higher risks of depression, isolation, and decline. And the opposite is true too. Those that stay cognitively engaged, especially in intergenerational settings, report greater purpose, stronger social connection, and greater mental health. Marjorie's story is extraordinary, but at LaSalle Village, she's not the exception. Doris took an AI course at 101. Ruth took a course on human sexuality and was able to share with undergraduate students what it was like to grow up female in the 50s. So much has changed since then, she said to me, but so much is still the same. Our residents aren't auditing life, they're authoring it. Stories like Marjorie's shouldn't be rare, but we've built our education systems for the first quarter of life. And then we tell people, you're done. Like their growth window just closes, along with their Google Calendar. We design for decline, and then we act surprised when people shrink to fit. And when we picture learning in later life, we think pottery, pickleball, maybe a slideshow in Venice. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, but we deserve more, because learning's not a pastime, it's a pathway to growth, not just distraction, and to purpose, not just safety. Learning doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase loss. Just last month, Marjorie gave up her driver's license. It was time, she told me. She made the decision with clarity, but that didn't make it easy. And this time, there was no poetic moment of transformation, just Marjorie choosing to let go of something that used to define her, but still holding on to herself. And the best way to hold on to ourselves is through learning. One study found that older adults who simply tried to learn juggling, whether they succeeded or not, showed increased gray matter. It's not about mastery, but about the effort. And yes, many of our residents in the audience are better jugglers than I am. We obsess over physical health span. But what about societal health span? The years a society stays curious, connected, and able to adapt. Because the more we ignore the growth potential of older adults, the more we all shrink. Social trust erodes, generations drift apart, and institutions grow stale. So what does that mean, you ask me? If you're an individual, the next time you're wondering what's next, take a class that stretches you. Better yet, take it with someone who's 2 generations older or younger than you. If you're an educator, build a longer table. Make room for older adults. They will come, they will lead, and they will transform your organization. If you're an aging services provider, invest in purpose-driven learning, not for entertainment, but for identity, vitality, and connection. And if you're a policymaker, treat learning like public infrastructure. It is as essential to health and belonging as transportation, because it truly connects us. The college campuses of the future cannot be built just for 18-year-olds. They must be built for all ages, for 80-year-olds who are standing on the brink of the threshold asking, who am I next? And so many of them will be women. Women who made room for everyone else's growth but their own. And now they're ready for more. Because threshold moments don't stop. Not at 40, not at 60, and not at 92. And when they come, we don't just need a place to land. We need a place to grow. Because we don't stop benefiting from learning as we age. We just stop being expected to. And when we can collectively build a society that embraces learning as a blueprint for aging, we extend identity, we extend belonging, and we extend life. Thank you.